I picked up the roast and walked out of my daughter's house. 79 years old, and I carried that pan like it weighed nothing, though my hands had been shaking all through dinner. Not from weakness, from something else entirely, from finally understanding what I'd been pretending not to see for 3 years. Patricia had said it so casually, not even looking at me, still arranging napkins for her book club guests. "Mother, you can eat after everyone's finished. There won't be enough seats otherwise." As if I were the help. As if I hadn't spent 6 hours preparing that roast, seasoning it with rosemary from the garden. I'd planted but was no longer allowed to tend because it wasn't my property anymore. The roast was still warm against my palms as I walked down the front steps. November air hit my face, sharp and clarifying. Behind me I heard Patricia's voice, high with confusion, then irritation. Mother, what are you doing? You can't just..." But I could. I kept walking. My car sat in the driveway where it always sat, the one thing Patricia hadn't managed to take control of yet, though she'd tried. Last month she'd suggested I probably shouldn't be driving anymore after I'd taken myself to the pharmacy without asking permission. Permission from my own daughter to drive my own car, to buy my own medication with my own money. Except it hadn't felt like my own money in a long time. I set the roast on the passenger seat, buckled myself in, and started the engine. In the rear-view mirror, Patricia stood on the porch, arms crossed, mouth moving. I couldn't hear her through the closed windows, didn't want to. The drive to my house, my actual house, the one Harold and I had bought 43 years ago, the one I'd been convinced to step away from temporarily when Patricia said. I needed looking after, took 17 minutes. I knew every turn by heart, though I hadn't made this drive in 8 months. Not since Patricia had collected the spare key and started checking on the property without telling me when or why. The neighbourhood looked the same. Maple trees lining Birch Street. Their leaves mostly gone now, branches reaching toward a grey sky like fingers grasping for something just out of reach. Mrs. Henley's house still had that crooked mailbox her husband had never gotten around to fixing before he passed. The Delgado children's bicycles lay abandoned in their yard, though those children were probably teenagers now, and the bicycles probably belonged to someone else's kids. Time had kept moving. I'd been standing still. I parked in my own driveway, the garage door opener still worked, small mercy, and I pulled inside next to Harold's workbench. 3 years of dust covered his tools, but I could still see where his hands had worn the wood smooth. He'd been gone 4 years now. The first year I'd managed. The second year Patricia had started helping. By the third year I'd somehow ended up living in her guest room, eating when told, speaking when appropriate, existing in the margins of my own remaining life. The roast sat on my kitchen counter, my kitchen. The yellow tile I'd chosen in 1987, the window above the sink that faced the backyard garden, now overgrown but still visible in the fading light. I found a plate, a fork, a knife. I sat down at my own table, in my own chair, and I ate. The meat was perfect, tender, seasoned exactly right, pink in the centre the way Harold had always liked it. I chewed slowly, tasted the rosemary, tasted the garlic, tasted salt that might have been tears, though I wasn't crying, not exactly. Something closer to thawing. When had I last eaten something? I'd cooked, sitting alone, choosing my own portion, taking my own time? I couldn't remember. At Patricia's, meals were scheduled, portions were suggested. Mother, that's quite a lot of bread. Mother, are you sure you need seconds? As if my body belonged to her too, as if my appetite required supervision. I finished the roast, every bite. No one interrupted, no one commented, no one reminded me of my cholesterol or my weight or the cost of groceries or the inconvenience of my preferences. The silence felt like breathing room. Afterward, I washed my plate and put it away. Simple act, revolutionary somehow after months of being told. The dishwasher was more efficient and I shouldn't waste water, and I loaded things wrong anyway. The house was cold. The heat had been turned off months ago, but I found the thermostat and adjusted it myself. Found blankets in the linen closet where I'd always kept them. Made tea in my own kettle. From my own tea collection, the good Earl Grey that Patricia said was too expensive for every day. I sat in Harold's chair in the living room, wrapped in the quilt my mother had made 40 years ago, and I drank tea that was too expensive for every day. Tomorrow, I would deal with the rest. The next morning I woke in my own bed for the first time in nearly a year. My body ached. The mattress was familiar, but I'd grown unused to it, and the house creaked in ways I'd forgotten. Pipes settling, foundation shifting. The sounds of a home that had been neglected but not abandoned, not yet. Patricia had called 11 times during the night. I'd turned my phone off after the third call and slept more deeply than I had in months. There were things I needed to understand before I spoke to her again. In Harold's study, where Patricia had never bothered to look because Dad's paperworks is probably outdated anyway, I found the filing cabinet. The key hung on the same hook behind the door where it had always been. Inside, our marriage certificate, the deed to the house, insurance documents, bank statements, and something else, a folder I didn't recognize, labelled in Harold's careful handwriting, "For Eleanor, when you need it." Inside, a letter. "My darling, if you're reading this, I'm gone and something has happened that made you come looking. I know our daughter. I love her, but I know her. She has her father's stubbornness and none of his patience, and I've watched her try to manage you for years. This folder contains copies of everything important. The house is yours, free and clear. The accounts are in your name. I set it up that way on purpose years ago when I first noticed how Patricia looked at you sometimes, like you were a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved. You are not a problem, Eleanor. You never were. If you need help, call Thomas Wright at Hartley and Associates. He's been our lawyer since 1992. He knows what I wanted for you. He knows what you deserve. I love you. I will always love you. Don't let anyone make you smaller than you are. Harold. The paper shook in my hands, not from weakness, from grief and gratitude and rage all tangled together, impossible to separate. He'd known. All those years of Patricia's comments, her suggestions, her gradual assumption of control, Harold had seen it. He'd prepared for it. He'd left me a map out of the maze I hadn't even realized I was trapped in. I found the bank statements next. The accounts were indeed in my name, just as Harold had said. But the most recent statement, from 2 months ago, forwarded from Patricia's address, showed something else. An authorized user had been added. Patricia Chen, daughter. I remembered signing something. She'd said it was for emergency. She'd said it was just in case. She'd handed me papers while I was still foggy with grief, still uncertain of my own judgment, still convinced that maybe I did need looking after. I'd signed away my autonomy with a pen that wasn't even mine. The phone rang again. Patricia. I let it go. To voicemail. Mother, this is ridiculous. You can't just leave like that. People are asking questions. I had to make up a story about a family emergency. You're embarrassing yourself, and frankly, you're embarrassing me. Call me back immediately. Embarrassing her. I was embarrassing her. I put on my coat, got in my car, and drove to the bank. The young man at the customer service desk had kind eyes and a patient manner, and he didn't treat me like I was confused or troublesome when I explained what I needed. His name tag said Marcus, and he listened, actually listened, while I described the situation. I need to remove my daughter as an authorized user from all my accounts, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'd expected it to shake. And I need to verify that no changes have been made without my direct approval. Marcus nodded, typed something into his computer, and frowned slightly. Mrs. Chen, I'm seeing a few things here that we should probably discuss in private. Would you mind stepping into my office? His office was small but comfortable. On his desk, a photograph of 2 children, gap-toothed and grinning. Your grandchildren? I asked. My kids, he said, smiling, 7 and 5. They're the reason I work here instead of somewhere fancier. Flexible hours. They're beautiful. Thank you. He turned his monitor so I could see it. Now, Mrs. Chen, I want to show you your account activity over the past year. Can you tell me if you authorized these transactions? He pointed to a series of withdrawals. Large ones, regular. The money had been transferred to an account I didn't recognize. No, I said, I didn't authorize those. And this change to your automatic payments? No. And this new beneficiary designation? No. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Chen, I want you to know that you have options here. What I'm seeing looks concerning. The bank has protocols for situations like this, and we can help you regain full control of your accounts today, if that's what you want. That's what I want. Okay. He typed rapidly. I'm removing Patricia Chen as authorized user, effective immediately. I'm also flagging your accounts for additional security. No changes can be made without you coming in personally with identification. And I'd recommend speaking to a lawyer about the transactions that occurred without your consent. The bank may be able to help recover some of those funds. How much is missing? He hesitated. Approximately $43,000 over the past 14 months. The number sat in the air between us. 43,000. More than I'd spent on myself in a decade. More than I'd imagined possible. I understand, I said, though I wasn't sure I did. Can you print me complete statements for the past 2 years? Absolutely. I left the bank with a folder of documents and a strange, floating sensation, as if I'd been underwater for a long time and had finally surfaced. The air felt different, colder, clearer. My next stop was Thomas Wright's office. The firm was downtown, in a building that looked both old and well-maintained. Dark wood panelling, thick carpets, the kind of place where serious things happened. Harold had chosen well. Thomas Wright was in his 70s himself, with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades listening to difficult stories. He remembered Harold immediately. "Good man," he said, shaking my hand. I was sorry to hear about his passing. He talked about you constantly, you know. Eleanor this, Eleanor that. I think I knew your pie recipes by heart before I ever met you. He told you about my pies? Apple crumb was his favourite, as I recall, though he said you'd started experimenting with pear. I hadn't baked a pie in 3 years. Patricia had said I shouldn't bother, that store-bought was easier, that there was no point making a mess in a kitchen that wasn't mine. "Mr. Wright," I said, "I need your help." He listened without interrupting as I explained everything. The gradual assumption of control, the signed documents I barely remembered, the power of attorney that had seemed reasonable at the time but had become a leash, the bank accounts, the house I'd been convinced to leave, the roast. When I finished, he sat back and steepled his fingers. "Eleanor, may I call you Eleanor? I'm going to be direct with you. What you're describing is concerning. Your daughter may not have intended harm, but the effect has been harmful. You've been isolated from your own assets, your own home, and your own autonomy. Whether that rises to the level of elder financial abuse, I can't say without more investigation. But I can tell you that you have every right to reverse these decisions. I want to revoke the power of attorney. We can do that today. And I want to create a living trust for my granddaughter, Lily. She's 23 and she's nothing like her mother, and I want to make sure—" My voice broke slightly. "I want to make sure that what I leave behind goes where I choose. We can do that too." The paperwork took 2 hours. Thomas was thorough, explaining each document, making sure I understood what I was signing. This time, the pen felt right in my hand. This time I knew exactly what my signature meant. When we finished, he walked me to the door. "Eleanor, one more thing. Harold left a letter with me too, for you, in case you ever came in alone. Would you like to read it?" Another letter. Harold's handwriting again, strong and slanted. I didn't cry when I read it, though the tears were there, pressing against the backs of my eyes. "You did it," the letter said. "You found your way out. I knew you would, eventually. I just wish I could be there to see it. Live the rest of your life for yourself, Eleanor. You've earned it." The house was still cold when I got home, but warmer than before. I turned on all the lights, made more tea, sat in the kitchen with my documents spread across the table, and read through every page twice. Patricia called again. I answered this time. "Mother, finally. What is going on? I've been worried sick. You need to come back. Here, right now, so we can know." The word came out clear and calm. Not angry, not apologetic, just absolute no. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no, Patricia. I'm not coming back. I'm staying in my house, which I own, which I never should have left."
Mother, you're not thinking clearly. You need supervision. You can't just...
"I've been to the bank," I said, "and to the lawyer. I know about the money, Patricia, the 43,000, the transfers you made without my consent, the changes to my accounts." Silence on the other end, long enough for my heart to beat 6 times. "I was managing things," Patricia said finally. Her voice had changed, smaller, less certain. "Someone had to. You weren't capable." "I was capable. I am capable. You convinced me otherwise because it was easier for you, because you wanted control, because you looked at me and saw a resource instead of your mother. That's not fair." Maybe not, but it's true. "What do you want then? You want me to apologize? Fine, I'm sorry. Now can we please?" "I want you to understand that things are different now. The power of attorney is revoked. You're no longer on any of my accounts. My assets are in a living trust, and you are not the beneficiary."
What? Really is?
The silence stretched longer this time. "You can't do that," Patricia said. "That's not... Mother, I've been taking care of everything. I've been the one handling the house, the finances, the responsibilities. Lily hasn't done anything." "Lily hasn't taken anything from me," I said. "There's a difference." I hung up the phone before she could respond. My hands were shaking again, but differently this time. Adrenaline, release. The strange lightness of having finally said the things I'd been carrying for years. Outside, night had fallen. The garden was dark. But I could see the shapes of what had once been there. The tomato cages, the trellises, the raised beds Harold had built. Overgrown now, neglected, but still present, still possible. In the morning I would start reclaiming it. Lily came the following weekend, driving down from Portland where she worked at a non-profit, advocating for housing rights. She'd inherited her grandfather's sense of justice, his quiet stubbornness. When she walked through my door, she hugged me for a long time without saying anything. "Grandma," she said finally, "I'm so sorry." "For what?" "For not seeing it sooner. For not stepping in." I knew Mum was difficult, but I didn't realize. She stopped, swallowed. Dad told me what she was doing, with the money, with everything. He's furious with her, but he let it happen too. They both did. "Your father is a good man who loves your mother more than he loves his own judgment," I said. "That's not entirely his fault. It's partly his fault." "Yes, partly." We sat together in the living room and I told her everything. The slow erosion of my autonomy, the signed documents, the roast, the letters Harold had left, the lawyer, the bank, the new trust. Lily listened the way her grandfather used to, listen fully, without interrupting. When I finished, her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. "I support you," she said. "Whatever you need. I'm here. I know you are, and I'm glad you put me in the trust, but Grandma, I don't need the money. I'm doing okay. I just want you to be okay. The money isn't for you to spend now. It's for later, for when I'm gone." I wanted to make sure. I paused, finding the right words. I wanted to make sure that something I built lasts, that it goes to someone who will use it for good. "You will, Lily." "I know you will." She hugged me again. Lighter this time, less desperate. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Learn, I suppose. Relearn. I used to sew. Did you know that? I made my own dresses until about 10 years ago. Your grandfather loved my garden. I was thinking of starting again. Nothing elaborate, just tomatoes, herbs, something living. That sounds perfect. It sounds like a beginning." After Lily left, I went upstairs to the room that had once been my sewing space. Patricia had never understood why I kept an entire room for an old-fashioned hobby, and over the years I'd stopped defending it, stopped entering it, stopped remembering that it mattered. The sewing machine was still there, under a dust cover, an old Singer that Harold's mother had given me as a wedding present. I'd made Lily's christening gown on this machine. I'd hemmed dozens of trousers, altered wedding dresses, created curtains and quilts and costumes for school plays. My hands remembered, even if my mind had tried to forget. I sat down at the machine and pressed the foot pedal. It hummed to life, the sound immediately familiar, immediately comforting, like running into an old friend and realizing that no time had passed at all, that the connection was still there, waiting. I didn't have any projects planned yet, but I would, soon. 3 days later, Patricia arrived unannounced. I saw her car pull into the driveway and felt my chest tighten, but only for a moment. I'd been expecting this, preparing for it. She came to the door, carrying a Tupperware container, a peace offering, I supposed, or a Trojan horse. "Mother," she said when I opened the door, "can we talk? We can talk here. You're not going to invite me in?" "I'm not sure yet." Her face flickered through several expressions: surprise, irritation, something that might have been hurt. "Mother, this is ridiculous. I'm your daughter." "Yes, and I'm your mother. But I haven't felt like your mother in a long time, Patricia. I've felt like your employee, your burden, your inconvenience." "That's not. You told me to eat last, in front of your guests, after I'd spent 6 hours cooking a meal you didn't ask for, didn't thank me for, and would have thrown away without tasting if I hadn't taken it with me." Patricia's mouth opened, closed. "I was managing the seating. You were erasing me. You've been erasing me for 3 years, maybe longer. I was too tired to notice, or too lonely, or too convinced that I needed you more than I needed myself. But I don't. Mother, I'm not angry with you, Patricia." This was almost true, almost. "I'm disappointed. I'm sad. I'm grieving the relationship we could have had if you'd seen me as a person instead of a problem. But I'm not angry anymore. Anger would require that I still expected something from you, and I don't. I've stopped expecting." She stood there, holding her Tupperware, looking smaller than I'd seen her look in years. "I was trying to help," she said. "Dad asked me to look after you. Your father asked you to love me. He asked you to include me. He asked you to make sure I was happy and secure. He did not ask you to take my money, my house, my dignity, and my right to eat dinner at my own table. That's not. I didn't, you did. Whether you meant to or not, you did." Silence settled between us, cold as the November air. "What do you want from me?" Patricia asked finally. "What do I have to do to fix this?" "I don't know if you can fix it," I said honestly. "I don't know if I want you to try. Right now, I want space, time, the chance to figure out who I am when I'm not being managed by my own daughter." "So what, I'm just supposed to—" "What? Wait. You're supposed to respect my boundaries for the first time in 3 years. You're supposed to stop calling 14 times a day. Stop showing up unannounced. Stop treating my decisions as problems to be solved. If I want to see you, I'll call you. If I want to visit, I'll ask. But I'm no longer available on demand." Patricia stared at me, really stared, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. "You've changed," she said. "I've remembered," I corrected. "There's a difference." She left the Tupperware on the porch steps and drove away without looking back. I picked it up, some kind of casserole, overcooked and under-seasoned, and set it in the refrigerator. I would eat it eventually. There was no sense in wasting food, but I would eat it on my own schedule. at my own table, in my own time. The legal documents arrived by courier the following week. Thomas Wright had been thorough. The living trust was finalised, with Lily named as primary beneficiary. My will was updated. The power of attorney revocation was officially recorded. Everything was exactly as I'd asked. I signed the final papers at my kitchen table with a cup of tea at my elbow and the radio playing softly in the background. Harold had always listened to the radio while he worked. I'd forgotten how much I missed the background noise of companionship, even when the companion was just a voice talking about the weather. When I was finished, I called Thomas. "Everything signed?" I said. "What happens now?" "Now you live your life," he replied. "That's the whole point, Eleanor. The paperwork protects you, but it can't make you happy. That part's up to you." "I know. Do you?" It was a genuine question, I thought. Socks badge through me? I think hardly. I'm for lap a Jean and a giving delidren about week. Patricia sent a dinner invitation. Thanksgiving was approaching, and she wanted to host the whole family as if nothing had changed. As if the past few weeks had been a minor disruption rather than a fundamental shift. I declined. The conversation was brief. Patricia's voice was tight with frustration, but she didn't argue. Perhaps she was finally beginning to understand that arguing wouldn't work anymore. Perhaps she was just biding her time. I couldn't tell, and I found that I didn't particularly care. "If you change your mind," she started, "I won't." "Mother, you can't just I'm not interested in spending a holiday pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. When things are actually fine, we can discuss holidays. Until then, I'm going to take care of myself." I hung up before she could respond. It was getting easier. Each conversation a little easier. Each boundary a little less effort. Maybe. That was what healing felt like. The slow reduction of resistance, the gradual rediscovery of ease. I spent Thanksgiving alone, made a small turkey breast, perfectly roasted, with mashed potatoes and green beans from a can, set the table for one, lit a candle, ate slowly, deliberately, tasting every bite. It was the best Thanksgiving meal I'd had in years. By December, I'd made a decision. I would sell the house and find something smaller, not because I needed to, not because anyone was telling me to, because I wanted to. The house was too full of memories, some sweet, some suffocating, and I needed space to build new ones. My own memories, shaped by my own choices, unmarked by Harold's absence or Patricia's control. I found an apartment downtown, walking distance from the library and the farmer's market that ran year-round. 2 bedrooms, so there was room for my sewing machine. A small balcony where I could grow herbs in pots, plenty of light. The day I signed the lease, I felt something shift in my chest. Not a physical sensation exactly, more like a door opening somewhere deep inside, letting air into rooms that had been closed for too long. I was 79 years old, and I was starting over. The first letter I wrote was to Margaret Chen, no relation, despite the shared name, who had been my closest friend before Harold died. We'd lost touch gradually, the way people do when grief makes every action exhausting. I hadn't reached out because I'd been ashamed. Ashamed of my circumstances, my dependence, my disappearance into Patricia's shadow. But shame was another form of silence, and I was done with silence. Dear Margaret, I wrote, I owe you an apology and an explanation in that order. I've been gone, but I'm coming back. Would you like to have lunch? Her response came a week later, handwritten on cream-coloured stationery. Eleanor, I've been waiting to hear from you. Lunch would be wonderful. How about the cafe on Main Street, the one we used to love before we got too old for such nonsense? Well, I've decided I'm not too old anymore. Are you? We met on a Tuesday afternoon. Margaret looked older. We both did, but her eyes were the same, sharp, warm, filled with the particular kindness of someone who has survived enough to know how rare survival can be. You look good, she said, hugging me tightly. You look like yourself again. I feel like myself again. Mostly we ordered soup, butternut squash, beautifully seasoned, and talked for 3 hours. I told her everything. The roast, Patricia, the bank, the lawyer, the new apartment. She listened without judgment, asking questions when they mattered, staying silent when they didn't. I'm proud of you, she said finally. Harold would be proud of you too. I think he is, wherever he is. Probably watching from that great workbench in the sky, building something out of clouds and telling everyone about your pie recipes. I laughed. It felt rusty, unfamiliar, but real. The kind of laugh that starts in your belly and surprises you on the way out. I'm going to start baking again, I said. Pies, cakes, whatever I want. Can I be your taste tester? Always. Lily came to visit the new apartment before I'd finished unpacking. She brought champagne for christening the place, and we toasted to new beginnings while sitting on boxes because I hadn't bought furniture yet. Grandma, she said after the champagne was gone and we were eating takeout directly from the containers, can I ask you something? Anything. How did you know that it was time to leave, I mean, that it was time to change everything? I thought about the question, about the roast, about the dinner table where I wasn't allowed to sit, about the moment when something shifted, when tolerance became intolerable, when staying became impossible. I didn't know, I said finally. Not in any conscious way. I just reached a limit. Everyone has one, I think. A line they can't let themselves cross. Mine was being told I couldn't eat dinner with other people. It sounds small when I say it out loud. It doesn't sound small. It sounds like the last straw. Yes, exactly. The last straw. But the thing is, Lily, the thing I've learned, is that you don't have to wait for the last straw. You don't have to let it get that far. You can draw boundaries earlier. You can say no the first time or the 5th time instead of waiting until the 100th. I'm trying to learn that, Lily said quietly. With Mum, with work, with everything. You will. You're stronger than you know. She smiled, and for a moment she looked so much like Harold that my heart ached. Can I help you? Unpack, she asked. I'd like that. We spent the afternoon arranging furniture and hanging pictures and making the apartment feel like home. By evening, the main rooms were done, and Lily helped me carry the last box, the one with my sewing machine, into the 2nd bedroom. What are you going to make first? She asked. I don't know yet. Something for you, maybe. A quilt. Or a dress. I'd love that. After she left, I sat in my new living room with the lights off, watching the city through my balcony windows. So many people out there, living their lives, walking dogs, carrying groceries, hurrying toward unknown destinations. I was one of them now. Not waiting, not managing, not tolerating, just living. The apartment filled slowly with evidence of my reclaimed life, herbs on the balcony, fabric samples on the sewing table, books from the library stacked on every surface. I cooked what I wanted, slept when I was, tired, woke when I was ready. Some days I felt Harold's absence like a physical ache. Other days I felt his presence instead, in the morning light, in the smell of coffee, in the particular satisfaction of completing a task well. Patricia called occasionally. Our conversations were brief, polite, carefully bounded. She didn't apologize. I wasn't sure she ever would. But she seemed to be learning, slowly, how to treat me like a person instead of a project. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it wasn't. I'd stopped trying to predict the future of our relationship. Whatever happened would happen. I would respond as I saw fit, in the. Meantime, I had soup to make. It was March when Lily asked if I would teach her to cook. Mum never really showed me anything, she admitted. She always said it was faster to do it herself. And then I went to college, and it was all dining halls and take-out, and now I'm 24 and I can barely boil water.
23, I corrected. I had a birthday in February. You sent me flowers.
I had white roses and lavender, her favourites.
24 then. And yes, I'll teach you.
We started simple vegetable soup. The same recipe I'd made for decades, adjusted slightly for her. Vegetarian preferences. I walked her through each step, the chopping, the sautéing, the simmering, explaining not just what to do, but why.
The onions have to go first because they need the longest time to soften and sweeten. If you add them with the other vegetables, they'll still be crunchy when everything else is done.
Patience matters in cooking, in most things, really. Lily nodded, stirring carefully. She was a quick learner, attentive and precise, asking questions when she didn't understand.
Grandma,
She said as the soup bubbled on the stove.
can I tell you something?
Of course.
I've been thinking a lot about boundaries, about what you
Said that day in your apartment, about not waiting for the last straw. Yes? I set one this week with Mom. She wanted me to talk to you on her behalf, to smooth things over, she said. And I told her no. I said it wasn't my job to manage your relationship, and if she wanted to fix things, she needed to do the work herself. I stopped stirring, looked at my granddaughter standing in my kitchen holding a wooden spoon like a weapon. That must have been hard, I said. It was. She didn't take it well. But I meant it. I'm proud of you. I learned from you. The soup was perfect. We ate it together, the steam rising between us like something sacred, like the visible evidence of connection and care. I thought about what I'd give her eventually, the money in the trust, the sewing machine, the recipes and stories and lessons. But this afternoon, this soup, this conversation was already a kind of inheritance, the passing on of something that couldn't be quantified or documented, the teaching of survival. When she left that evening, she hugged me at the door. "Same time next week?" she asked. "Same time next week." I closed the door behind her and stood in my kitchen, my apartment, my life. The silence wasn't weighted anymore. It wasn't oppressive or empty or waiting to be filled. It was simply silence. The natural backdrop of a life lived on its own terms. I washed the dishes, put away the leftovers, swept the floor. Small acts, enormous freedom. Spring came slowly that year, but it came. The herbs on my balcony sprouted new growth. The farmer's market burst with early greens. The days lengthened, giving me more light to read by, more time to sit on my balcony and watch the world wake up. I started a new quilt, a project I'd been dreaming about for months, but hadn't felt ready to begin. The fabric was a collection of scraps from decades of sewing, the blue cotton from Lily's christening gown, a strip of Harold's favourite plaid shirt, pieces of dresses I'd made for myself in happier times. Each square was a memory. Each stitch was a choice. The quilt grew slowly, the way all worthwhile things grow. Some days I worked for hours, other days not at all. There was no deadline, no expectation, no one waiting impatiently for me to finish. I was sewing for myself now. Everything was for myself now. One evening, near the end of spring, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and watched the sunset paint the city in shades of orange and pink. The quilt was draped across my lap, half finished, beautiful in its incompleteness. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, sitting in Patricia's guest room, eating when told, speaking when permitted, shrinking a little more each day. That woman felt far away now, not erased exactly, just released. She had been necessary, that diminished woman. She had done what she needed to do to survive, but she wasn't needed anymore. I lifted my wine glass in, a silent toast to her, to the woman who had endured, to the woman who had finally said enough. The sunset faded, the stars emerged. I went inside, turned on the lights, and continued sewing. In the quietest hours of the night, when the city slept and the apartment was still, I sometimes heard Harold's voice. Not literally. I wasn't losing my mind, whatever Patricia might have suggested, but in memory. His laugh, his particular way of saying my name, his habit of humming while he worked. I missed him constantly. I also loved him constantly. The two feelings lived side by side, neither diminishing the other. He had given me so much, children and grandchildren, decades of partnership, a life built carefully and tended with devotion. But his final gift was the letters, the folder he'd left behind, the map out of the maze. He had known that I would need it. He had trusted that I would use it. I hoped wherever he was that he could see me now, that he knew his trust had been justified, that the woman he'd loved was still there, still fighting, still capable of holding her own fork at her own table. I hoped he was proud. The last legal document arrived in June, the formal transfer of all assets into the living trust. Thomas Wright had done his job perfectly. Everything was in order. Everything was protected. I sat at my kitchen table with the document in front of me and felt something settle. Not excitement exactly, not relief, something deeper. The quiet satisfaction of completion. I had done it. All the steps that had seemed impossible a year ago, leaving Patricia's house, confronting the truth about my finances, reclaiming my autonomy, building a new life. I had done them all. I signed my name one final time in the space marked for my signature. Then I set the pen down and simply sat for a while, breathing, being, existing on my own terms. The phone rang. Patricia again. I let it ring. Not because I was angry, not because I was hiding, but because I was busy. I was living. And living, I had learned, sometimes required ignoring the people who had tried to erase you, at least until they learned to see you clearly. Eventually, Patricia might learn, or she might not. Either way, I would be here, in my apartment, at my table, eating when I chose to eat, speaking when I chose to speak. No longer the last. No longer invisible, just Eleanor, 79 years old, and finally, completely myself.